Hi everyone, and welcome to my September wrap-up. I know this is very late. I swear to God, I feel like every month I get my wrap-up up later and later. I feel like people aren't interested in wrap-ups because it's just so many books at once. There's a reason why TBRs get more views than wrap-ups, because you get to see books being mentioned without having to hear those pesky thoughts that go along with it. I've also gotten accustomed to doing semi-weekly Friday wrap-ups, which will do like basically short reviews there. It's also easier when I do it the week of instead of 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later. So I'm going to go through these and give you a quick rating and my thoughts, but I will just refer you to all of my Friday reads. And if I have the time, I'll try and go ahead and break down the books I talk about by video as well. Otherwise, I'm going to go through these from when I read them. The first book I read was a book I was really behind on, which was Zone 1. This was for like the July or something literary book club pick, and I was behind, but I wanted to read it so I could watch the live show. It is now late October. I'm still not sure if I watched the live show, but I did read this. I gave it 3 stars. It was a different take on a zombie apocalypse, but it did not work for me because it was different. Like you branch out, try something new. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I read this also for a literary book club, and this one I enjoyed. It has a lot of stuff that I like, a lot of homages to some classic horror, especially The Haunting of Hill House. I liked this. That's why it's hence me giving it 4 stars. Although I would say it's in the lower end of 4 stars, just because I don't much love thrillers that try to be horror, supernatural horror, when you're clearly not. And I just think it's a bit of a dud when you try that. Now this one I think did it better than many that I've read, which granted I haven't read that many, but that's why I'm giving it 4, because it is a fun read, and it's a pretty effective at recreating these classic supernatural horror aspects to a story. I do not remember reading this so soon ago. I thought it was further back. God, this year is flying by, but also not. Sonia Sotomayor's My Beloved World. She is a Supreme Court Justice. I like this. I think I gave this 4 stars. Interesting read, while also being a detailed outline of her life leading up to her becoming a Supreme Court Justice, who was nominated and confirmed under the Obama White House. I thought it was a good biography, exactly what I was hoping for from a Supreme Court Justice. Now moving on to the reading blog I did, where I was reading Jordan from Left on Red's favorite books. The Poet X, 4 stars. I like this, I like the way it was written, I like the style, and I thought it was a good story. Friday Black, and this is a set of short stories that have to do with race, science fiction, and horror, and maybe some fantasy, and I really like this. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. Seeing Unburied Sing by Jesmyn Warlick. I think I gave this 4 stars, although I was slow to do that because I had a hard time connecting to this one. And finally, Barracoon, The Last Slave Cargo by Zora Neal Hurston, which is a story of one of the last living men to have been a slave. I forgot to say my thoughts, so just to clarify, this story I gave 3.5 out of 5 stars because the main narrative of her telling his life was really moving and it was really immersive. But the last section, just a bunch of short stories from his life, which were disconcerting, and the added commentary from the editor in certain sections just makes it not really work. The last part just really was hard to get through. Next, I read Tuesdays with Morrie. This is one that I went really in depth in my Friday reads, and this one just did not live up to my memories of it. I once gave it 5 stars, and now I gave it 3.5 stars. It is nonfiction. Next, I read the original rather, by Mary Robinette Kowal and Brandon Sanderson. This was a short novella or short story that was given to me as an e-arc from NetGalley, in the audiobook form. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. It was creative and easy to read, as I would expect from these 2 great authors. Next was The Hallow Ones by Guillermo Toro and another author. It's a detective story about some sort of like demonic monster coming about and them trying to hunt it down, try to understand what it is. I gave this 4 stars, and this was akin to The Outsiders by Stephen King, but I would say it's probably a bit better, at least in how it talks about police and the way it frames police. Shut Up, You're Pretty, and I really like this. I gave this 4 stars, and this is another arc I got from NetGalley. It was a set of short stories, but they weren't really short stories because each short story connected to a bigger overarching story. And this worked really well because as individual stories, they're actually really provocative, but they never go quite far enough. I'm always left wanting a bit more. But luckily, our characters always continue to the next chapter, not the next chapter per se, the next short story, which is independent and yet also interconnected in a way that they really build well together. So as a collection, it works out to be a really good read in my opinion. And then finally we're getting into the Night Buzzwordathon, and I didn't have a reading blog for this, but I did do a themed Friday reads for this. So the first one that I want to talk about is the Night Masquerade by Neal. And this one I enjoyed. I think I gave it 4 stars. Sorry, I forgot. Benji the Night Masquerade by Neal. Well, not on ARCs anymore. And then by Charlie Jane Anders is The City in the Middle of the Night. This one I did not like. I didn't like the writing style. I didn't like our characters. I loved the creativity, and I was just really disappointed. And I will say that I was almost DNF this multiple times, but I would say by the end of it, it paid off for reading it. But at the same time, it shouldn't have been so slow starting out. What's worse is that it was the way the story was structured. I felt like could have been much more effectively handled in a way that was not as sluggish, even though this is still so short. Next up, another E-arc. It came to the Midnight Multiplex or something like that. It had the word midnight in it, I think. And this is a set of short stories that has to do, or rather it's supposed to be an homage to 80s horror films. This was a very mixed bag. I would say mostly on the meh end, but there are a few stories that really shine through. I know we have Stephen Graham Jones in this. I think we might have Garth Nix. I don't remember. I got this because the cover, and I like 80s horror, so I figured why not. Ironically enough, it's October and I'm reading another, I think, a bigger named anthology of horror stories that are around horror film. It ended up turning out better, but you're not here for that, are you? That's for next month. And then there was Night by Elie Wiesel. This was the winner of a Nobel Peace Prize, and I really liked this. This was, not the right best word here, but it was a really good memoir, a very effective memoir. It really sticks out to me, this narrative, even though it's so short. I feel like I remember much more from this than I do from a lot of books, and I'm really interested in continuing this set of memoirs, which I know is a trilogy. Finally, Stephen King's 4 Past Midnight. This one I gave, I want to say, 3.5 stars. And it's Stephen King. I wanted something easy and fun to read, and that's exactly what this was. I got to read The Langoliers, which is a TV movie that's really shitty, but I absolutely love. And there were a few other stories I never heard of that I thought were intriguing. I think what it was there were a couple 3s and 2 4 stars to give us the 3.5 star average, but about what I expected. And then lastly are 3 books that I haven't talked about in any sort of video yet, and that's because I did it for the Queer Weekendathon, where I ended up extending it for a week in an entire vlog, but I haven't posted it. I'm going to go through the books here, but I'm curious if people would be interested in seeing that vlog. I think it was a fun vlog, and the books I think I had a lot to talk about. So let me know if you're interested in still seeing that, even though it'll be like a month late at this point. Where are we? I remember we called Empire by Arkady Martine, and this one I had a hard time getting into, and that's just because it's a very dense book. It's a space opera that has to do with this futuristic society that is, what was it again? That was trying to deal with like a change in leadership or something. I don't quite remember at this point, honestly. It's been so long. But I almost wanted to reread this, and I almost did, but ultimately I didn't have the time for it, because the real reason I gave this 3.5 stars was because I struggled with the characters and the world building, which is always a problem when I get into something that's so dense like this in high sci-fi or high fantasy. And I think I could really like this, and I want to try at it again. I might do that eventually, especially since there's another story coming out. I remember being intrigued enough to want to continue it. And the reason I originally picked this up was because it was a Hugo Award winner this year, beating out Middle Game, which I still love more, but that was why I chose to read it. A story that I enjoyed even more, I want to say this 4.5 or 5 stars, I don't remember, but what am I saying? An Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon. And this one I really liked. This one I felt like was easier to read, also more enjoyable in the sense that it was better storytelling. And I also thought it was really fascinating commentary going on here about this future world, this future arc that was basically mirroring the Antebellum South. I saw also commentary on a class system. It reminded me a lot of the Snowpiercer, with more commentary on race. It was a fascinating book, and I'm really excited to read more by River Solomon. Yeah, I had a lot to say about this in the reading vlog, but for now that's all I want to say. If you're interested in hearing more, maybe I should do the reading vlog. I don't know. That's the big reason why I want to do it, because I did love talking about that book in real time. And then lastly, I read Surrender Your Sons, a book that I need to review for NetGalley, and I gave this 3.5 stars. This was a YA thriller mystery about a young gay man who was sent off to conversion camp by his very Christian mother. And as I say in the video that may or may not get posted, like, I like the idea, it's fun, but it just felt like a caricature. It felt like he was using a dramatic thing that happens to create a mediocre story. The story itself was, I mean, it was for teens to be fair, but it did not feel natural. It didn't feel, I did not mean that in the way it may come out. It did not feel as though it was a realistic story. And these things do happen, and I would have liked to have seen it portrayed in a more realistic, if fictional way. It just didn't work out well. It was a fun read, an easy read. I was able to speed through it, and I get it. It's just, while I haven't read these stories before myself, I can't help but think that these kind of stories have to already exist, in which case it would be just a rehash, and not a very good one at that. But it's hard for me to say that when I haven't actually read that. I am curious if you have read any stories about queer conversion camps or things similar to that you thought were really good. I would be interested in reading more about that, because I wasn't sent to a conversion camp, but I grew up in a very conservative Christian household. I'm rambling now. I always hate to say goodbye, but we have to, because technically it's almost November and we have to get this shit done. If you stuck around this long, thank you so much, and let me know if you're interested in seeing that Queerlet Readathon. Until next time, I hope you have a fantastic day. Goodbye.